Have you ever wondered how educators and community members can support immigrant families, undocumented youth, and individuals with DACA? That's exactly what this podcast is going to explore. Join us to learn more about these topics, listen to our guest stories, and explore resources to support students and their family. I'm your host, Dr. Gerardo Mancilla. I immigrated to the United States at a young age and am currently working as an associate professor of education. This is the Educators and Immigration Podcast. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Educators and Immigration. I'm your host, Dr. Gerardo Mancilla. It has been a while since I have been able to publish an episode because I have been busy with conference presentations and different programs like MISOL, which we'll be discussing today. In episode 15, we had 3 participants share their experience participating in the 2022 Winter MISOL program. Erika Rosales Garcia and Yesenia Villalpando Torres and I had the opportunity to create a second cohort of MISOL for the summer 2023. We had 17 participants had the opportunity to go to Mexico and return with Advance Parole. Today, we'll talk with 3 of those participants. This will be a 2-part series, and in the next episode, we'll have an opportunity to talk to 2 additional participants about their experience. Diana, Dulce, and Yoana, gracias por estar aquí en el podcast. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
One of the things that I like to do is just begin by asking everybody to introduce themselves, all the guests to introduce themselves to the audience. So, Yoana, maybe have you start and kind of just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, yeah. My name is Yoana Rivera. I'm originally from Puebla, Mexico, and I've been in the U.S. for 27 years. I do work at Summit Credit Union, and I was so glad to be part of this program. It was amazing.
Thank you so much. And it was great to have you in the program as well.
Thank you.
Diana, what about yourself? Can you tell the audience a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, my name's Diana. I was born in Oaxaca, pero soy de Tuxtepec también. And I was brought here when I was, I want to say like 3 or 4. And I'm in nursing school, so I'll be graduating this May. So very exciting.
Felicidades.
Thank you.
And Dulce, would you mind telling the audience a little bit about yourself?
Of course. My name is Dulce Fuentes. I was born in Nezahualcóyotl, Mexico, and I've been in the States for 23 years this year, so a lot of years in retrospect. I currently work as an instructional aide at a school for special needs, and we focus on kids with behavioral issues and developmental issues, and so we try to help them adjust to be able to learn in their districts and their normal school settings. So pretty cool job.
Thank you, and thank you everybody for introducing yourself. And you all had the opportunity to be part of the second cohort of MISOL. So by the time you all apply for the program, there had been already 1 cohort that had gone through, and you might have had the opportunity to talk to some of them about it. Can you talk a little bit about your decision to apply for the program? What was happening for you as you were applying for the program and thinking about going? And then for this one, maybe you could start with Diana then?
Yeah, so I had already been looking into doing a study abroad program through my nursing program, just because I knew that having a legal entry was going to be required in order for me to get citizenship later on. So I had talked to a few lawyers and was actually thinking about going to Africa as part of one of the nursing abroad programs. But the lawyer actually told me not to because of the issues that were going on with DACA, and she didn't want me to get stuck in Africa and then not be able to come back. So that kind of discouraged me. And then I remember I was in school and I was just kind of like scrolling through my emails, and I saw an email that read like a love letter to DACA. And I was like, oh, this is going to be something super sweet. Like, I'm going to read it. And I usually don't. I usually don't read like my emails actually. And I don't know. It just like in a way it kind of feels divine because when I read it and I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh. And I right away like sent it to my family and was like, is this for real? So they encouraged me to apply, and I was like, you know what? I'm not going to listen to what that lawyer says. I'm just going to go ahead and do it because I can't just keep putting it off for the rest of my life. So then I did it, and then I remember it was a really fast process because we had those like set deadlines. And my family at first was like, are you sure it's not a scam? Because they're asking for like a money order and like all of this. I'm like, well, it's kind of too late now. I already sent the money order. And fortunately it wasn't.
Yeah, and when you said a love letter, the reason why we did that is because the call came out at around February 14th, which is Valentine's Day. And so as we were trying to think about how to promote the program, this idea of a love letter to DACA beneficiaries came through mind. So I appreciate hearing that that was the thing that got your attention in it. Dulce, what about for yourself? How did it feel to apply for the program?
Honestly, it was a really surreal experience. I found out about it through a friend of a friend, and she mentioned it. She said, hey, there's this program out of Edgewood, and she graduated from Edgewood. So she at the time was a student here, and she's like, think about it. I think you'd really like it. You've always talked about going back. She was a citizen, so she was traveling a lot back and forth, and she was kind of letting me know what her trips were like. So I immediately was like, I also knew, this is something I need to get done. I had been just so scared to do it, but the opportunity seemed really cool, right? So I went to go look for the first cohort, and unfortunately, applications were done. I was too late, and I was like, oh no, okay, maybe I'm not going to get to do this. So I signed up for notifications for emails and, future updates, and I missed it. It all went to my spam folder. And so I was like, I didn't know you guys had applications out. And that same friend was like, hey, the applications are open. You should apply. Literally on Saturday, and applications closed on Sunday. So I was like, wow, timing is, perfect. I otherwise wouldn't have seen this. I probably would have missed out again. So I thought that was an indication of how things were going to go. And like Diana, my family thought it was a scam, and they're like, are you sure? Do you trust this? I mean, it's a lot of money. And I'm like, I know, but it's life-changing. It's once in a lifetime. I honestly didn't even think I was going to ever be able to have something like that, a trip to Mexico, so close and attainable without it seeming like a lot of work, right? Because when you're doing it on your own, it can be overwhelming, and it's scary. You read about things that have happened to other people and, experiences with others, and it makes you kind of second guess if you're able to do it. So I was just excited, and I really I put all my hope into it. I knew it was going to be something great, and true to myself and who I am, I applied at 11:58 p.m. on Sunday, right before the deadline closed. And I'm like, okay, I hope I poured my heart into the answers to the questions for why we wanted to be a part of this. And then when I got the news, I lost it. I started crying. I couldn't believe it. And my parents still thought it was a scam. Even then, they're like, there's no way, there's the header with the university's information, and just it's a very real letter. And my mom is like, I don't know, think about it, it's a lot. And so, yeah, the whole process was, I knew from the minute I opened up that, to apply, that it was going to be something great. And it did. It turned out beautifully. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing. And I think both of you kind of talked about this idea of it happened at the right moment so that I could be able to take advantage of it. And then the other part that you mentioned, so the program was housed under the Center for Dreamers at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, which is why we had the header for UW-Madison. Myself, I work at Edgewood College, and I think that might have been the other connection, that even though Edgewood wasn't officially connected, me being on the steering committee was also that connection with Edgewood, also giving it more different ways of connecting to the program and participants.
Exactly. It felt like a very, I don't even know the word for it, but it was very professional, too, it wasn't just apply for, you've got multiple universities, accredited universities behind it. UNAM too, right? It was a dream of mine to go to UNAM. So when I saw that attached to it as well, it's wow, these people, and I've heard things already before from the first cohort. So yeah, I just the fact that the opportunity was even there, I didn't think twice. I said, let's go for it. I kind of had the money, and I was like, I don't care. Mom, haz una tanda, let's get this. I want to make it real. So yeah, that's what started it. And it's wonderful that it came to me it did. Yeah.
Thank you very much for sharing. And the other thing that I wanted to mention for the audience is that the reason why we have a speedy process or deadlines coming up is because of AP. Advance Parole usually takes 4 to 6 months for us to get it through. So this particular program was happening in August. And so I mentioned February is when we kind of started rolling out the applications. And so we needed time to be able to process everything, have you all have everything ready so we could submit it to the USCIS. And then that's why it felt like it was very rushed. But I could see from your end how also that feels like they're asking for a lot and it's all right now.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you all trusting us with that process. Joanna, what about for yourself? How did it feel for you?
It was unbelievable since the beginning, because I also found out from a friend. I think he tried to go like the first cohort, but I don't know what happened that he couldn't. And he's like, "Oh, I'm going this time." And did you apply it? I'm like, "No, you never told me when it was." And he was like, "Oh my goodness, you should." I'm like, "Okay. So where do I go? What do I do?" And I just kept asking him, and he was like, "Yeah, you go here, you applied, and then they have all these." And I think he knows Erica and stuff. So I was like, okay. So I was in awe when everything happened. Like, everything happened so fast. And when I got approved, I told my mom, and she was like, "No way." I was like, yes. And to me, to this day, it's just unbelievable that I went back. It had been 27 years for me. I hadn't seen my grandma, my aunties, and a lot of like cousins that I don't really like knew. I met for the first time, but it was like I have never left. It was just amazing. Yeah.
And similarly, thank you for trusting us with that process, because as everybody else has mentioned, it was something new, something that it was wanting to believe it too, and then also that asking for money upfront right now, which I think was really important. So the program was divided into two different parts. The first part of it had to do with an ethnographic research, where you get to travel and be with your family. Can you reflect on that experience of going to Mexico, reconnecting with your family, and reconnecting with different locations of Mexico? Dulce, I'm wondering if we could start with you on this one.
That was, I'm still processing it, honestly. I think at the start of it, throughout, in the middle and at the end of it, you guys did this awesome, processing circle, right? So we were going through all of this together and helping each other process what it really meant. And honestly, I think I'm still doing that even, months later. Almost a year later, we're coming up on a year this summer, right? So to me, it's still something that I'm like really accepting happened and, taking from it still, because I did a lot, and that month came and went so quickly. And those weeks with our families did too. I'm sure for everybody, it felt like, just wasn't enough time. So that little bit amount of time, I'm still, trying to capture all of it. But that was, like Joanna said, I got to meet family I didn't know was out there, and I got to see the extent of that family, both on my mom's and my dad's side. I got to remember, I grew up there for a little bit till I was about 5, so I got to remember what my childhood was like. Just my grandparents' house where we used to live, some of the foods we ate, the smells, like just different things, right, that you do, taking el metro, riding a cab, like los mototaxis. Those were not mototaxis back in the day. So it was really, really, really beautiful to just take it all back in and feel like you never left. I finally felt like I was where I belonged. Like, I don't feel like I belong here. There's a beautiful community in the States, for Latinos, and it's only ever expanding. But something about being back with my family, I just felt like that was home. Like, I'd been missing that, and I didn't know that. I loved the time that we spent together with the school, but that was probably like, right, I think for a lot of us, that was like the heaviest part, the most important part, getting to see our families and just reconnect with people we didn't see for a really long time, and then people that we never met. And then a lot of us got to say goodbye. I got to say goodbye to a lot of family members that I didn't get a chance to. So while it was hard, everything was just, I was so happy the whole time. I didn't really miss it here. My mom's like, "You don't miss me? You don't want to come home?" And I'm like, "I love you. You're everything." But no, I have been waiting 20 something years to do this and come back. And now I'm here. Like, I don't want to leave it. So yeah, it was so beautiful that I'm still to this day trying to accept that I'm back here and, trying to get the action plan in motion to get back there, because it was life-changing. I will never feel as alone as I did. Right now, I know I have this whole home back there, and it's real. It's there. They still care about me. They never forgot about me. And, it's that extension of who I am. So yeah, I don't think that this trip would have been as life-changing if we wouldn't have had that opportunity to heal that part of ourselves. Like, that's really why I went on this trip. And it's, why I really wanted to do it, and why I put all my hope and everything into it, because I wanted it to change my life, and I wanted it to heal things that broke when I left Mexico. And so, yeah, going back and getting to hug all those aunts, getting to see my grandparents' house, running through those el patio and la azotea, like those things that we don't really have here. So going to el tianguis, like all that stuff, just working at my aunt's panaderia, just eating all the food, everything about it was just, I don't even know. There's no words for it. There's no words. It was so beautiful. So yeah, definitely worth it. Yeah.
So you mentioned the healing aspect, the belonging aspects, and then even how people opened their doors for you as well when you were there, and how te recibían, or how they welcomed you in as well. Yoana, what about for yourself? How did it feel to reconnect with family members and to be able to travel back to Mexico?
Like I said, it was amazing. I did not tell anybody that I was going back. The only person who knew was my cousin, right? And that was only because I needed somebody to go pick me up. Otherwise, I don't think I would have told anybody.
Did you want it to be a surprise for your family?
I wanted to be a surprise for my family. Unfortunately, some of them got upset about that. They were like, why you didn't tell me? I'm like, it's okay. I just wanted to see you, I miss you guys so much, and I just wanted to hug you, to be there with them. And to finally see my grandma after all these years, and see my dad again, and all that stuff. So it was a healing journey pretty much for me, to just not leave it all behind, but kind of make peace with it, And then just seeing my grandma again, it was amazing. Right now, my mom was talking to her, and I was like, oh, I'm so glad I see you, because I don't know if I would see her again. She's getting old, and we never know. But mostly seeing my dad too, it was like a healing process for me. It's been a few years, but at the end of the day, he's my dad and everything, so I'm like, it's okay. But everything worked out well. He's doing fine. We are doing fine. And I think everything worked out. Yeah.
And Dulce was mentioning the smells, the taste, the sounds.
Yes.
Are there things that were coming up for you as you were thinking about going back, and not only being with family, but also being around them too?
Yeah, so it's funny because one of my aunts lives all the way up to the cerro, She lives all the way up there, and just the smell of the wet grass and the smell of the la leña. Ella cocinó en su fogón.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it was so amazing. Yeah. All those smells came back, and I was like, oh, this is home. This is home, but we have to come back. Well, I miss my kids, so that's maybe the only reason why I didn't wanted to stay that much. But yeah, it was amazing. And then also just seeing the house that I lived in before, it was amazing just how lonely feels right now, because all the younger ones are gone, and it's only my older uncles and stuff, and everything was just so special. I'm like, where's all the kids? Where are all the kids now? We're all gone. But it was really nice to just connect with everybody and to receive all the affection and be like, yes, it felt like I never left, to be honest. Yeah, it was, Lupita, because they don't call me by my first name, Yoana, they call me by my middle name. They always call me Lupita, qué bueno que viniste, Lupita, que tantos años. Y pues sí, fueron muchos años, pero estuve muy contenta de estar con todos ellos y de recordar todo lo que vivimos antes. Mi primo me estaba diciendo muchas aventuras y le digo, yo no me acuerdo de mucho, pero sí me acuerdo de cosas chistosas que pasamos siempre y todo lo que vivimos. Muy bonito cuando jugábamos en el patio todos, con la pelota, con los perros, y tuvimos una infancia muy bonita. Yeah.
Talking about the stories, talking about relearning and reliving those memories, as well as you mentioned the food. That's always a great part of it too.
Yeah.
And both of you have talked about how it was only a month, but it felt like you wanted to absorb every single minute of it. You didn't want it to end. And so you tried to think about how do you hold on to all of it at the same time. Diana, what about for yourself? How did it feel to go back and reconnect with family and the healing process that you mentioned as well?
I do have to agree. It was really life-changing. I ended up going with my younger brother and my younger sister. And they had also never been to Mexico. They were both born here, so their process was a little easier. But they had never been on a plane. So it kind of felt like a big responsibility for me to have to like make sure that I got myself there safe, but also get my younger siblings there safe. And I remember they were just super terrified of just being on the plane. So that was kind of funny. But once we got there, we had never actually seen what my grandma looks like. She still has a flip phone and vive en Tres Valles in Veracruz. So it's like literally a middle of nowhere town, dirt roads, So when we ended up landing, we had no idea what she looked like. And we had to FaceTime my mom and be like, Mom, where is she? So eventually there's this older lady and this other lady standing, just staring at us. And we're like, is that them? So eventually when we pointed the phone at them, my mom was like, oh my God, son ellas. So that was kind of how we ended up meeting. And it was kind of awkward at first, just because that sort of relationship had not been so developed. We knew of each other and had known our histories and stuff. So that was very interesting to navigate. And my grandpa tiene una tiendita en Tres Valles, so he loves his store. He will not leave it no matter what. So we actually ended up getting a ride from a neighbor, and we didn't know that he was a neighbor. So my sister and I are in the back of the car, is that grandpa? Who is this man? It was a little scary because we had no idea where we were or who people were. But as time went on, we kind of got to know them a little better and really get to be oh yeah, this is really you. It connects, And it was super sweet because when we got there, my grandpa had been cleaning everything, and he ordered a cake that said Bienvenidos Nietos.
Aww.
And had a whole party. A bunch of people from the neighborhood were there. It was super sweet. I felt so loved, and I do have some memories of Mexico. And the whole time I was on the phone with my mom, just kind of showing her around, and we were both just crying because it was exactly how we remembered, but at the same time so different. So it was this weird feeling of yes, this is home, but it's changed a little. But I think there's definitely some beauty in that as well. And it was in August, Veracruz, so it was so hot, so hot. Oh my gosh. You would literally just be standing outside for 2 seconds and you'd just be drenched in sweat. It was great. I mean, one of those things that in the moment you're oh my goodness, I can't handle it. But then once you're out of it, you're that was amazing. There were obviously a lot of foods that I remembered my grandma making, and she would make them again. And honestly, I feel I remember them as tasting great, but once I actually had them and I was in Mexico, I was oh my God, I'm having a taco in Mexico. So
it's so much better.
Yeah,
it's so much better.
Yeah. So it was amazing. And even now, Dulce, I still think about that. Whenever I'm feeling down or feeling there's no way I can get through nursing school, or there's no way I can pass this exam. And it's I'm doing this for you, Grandma. This is for you. And having that experience, I feel definitely helps and keeps pushing me to continue to do great things and continue to push myself to seek something further and not settle, because I know that my mom went through a lot to get here and to give us opportunities. So to be able to kind of see that and make that connection has really, encouraged me to keep going.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing, all three of you, because as you all mentioned, this is all very personal. There's a different reliving that happens when we are back home and we're able to reconnect with family members as well as the food. I mean, I could have chilaquiles here, but they're not the same as the chilaquiles over there. And so it's just a different way of living and being in the moment as well. So the second part of the program that we had to do with actually working with La UNAM, visiting some historical locations and being able to kind of learn as we were traveling through different places. Can you talk about what was one moment that you took away as we had the second part of it when we were together as a group and we were working with La UNAM? And maybe, Yoana, if we could start with you on this one.
Yeah, pretty much everything, because I remember when I got to the States, I think I was in segundo de primaria, or de secundaria, perdón, pero...
That would have been middle school?
Yeah, middle school kind of thing, yeah. And I knew a little bit about like everything that we were studying, but not all. Like when we went to Las Pirámides, it was amazing. Porque I remember like every year they used to do like una excursión de la escuela, but I never was allowed to go for some reason. So I never went to any of that. So it was pretty amazing to like rebuild my knowledge about it. Y todo lo que conlleva ser mexicano, ¿no? Like, como dicen, no nada más son tacos y tequila. También hay mucha más historia. There's a lot of history there. Las pirámides, el Teposteco, todo, el Teposteco. Sí, eso fue lo que más me marcó, el Teposteco. Y luego los demás, los murales y todo eso, like, como ver el contexto que tenían, eso fue muy interesante. Por cómo lo estaba explicando la maestra, cómo tienen diferente mensaje en unas pinturas que pues la verdad pues si las ves así y no sabes nada pues no te das cuenta de lo que conlleva, ¿verdad? But the way she explained it was really nice. Like, okay, I wouldn't think that, but it was really nice. Like everything, like all the experience was good.
And with the murals, you're talking about popular education as a way to not only support the community learning about it, but also the historical context in which it was also drawn with that moment.
Exactamente. Well. Yeah, for sure.
And thank you for sharing about the pyramids too and the Teposteco. I was so mad that I couldn't go with you all for that one. Yeah. But I'm happy that most of this cohort actually did it. Yeah. I think the majority of y'all did.
Yeah, it took us 2 hours.
2 hours. 2 hours. 2 hours.
I'm never gonna forget. Like every time, like I wanna quit. I'm like, no, I can do it. We did
it. we kept looking at each other like it's not that late to turn around. And at one point, we were just like, nope, it's too late. You got it. I got it. Even if it takes us the rest of the day, we got it. Lo hicimos.
Yeah, lo hicimos.
And I'm glad you both were able to. Well, most of the cohort did that one, so I'm glad that y'all were able to do it because for me, during the first trip, that was one of the biggest takeaways for me. Was being able to do that hike and see the pyramid at the top, and the Teposteco.
Yeah, exactly. Because it was something that I never in a million years I thought I was gonna be able to do because it was too much walking, too much like effort and stuff, but I don't know, something kept pushing me. I don't know. I don't even know what it was. So it was like, we got this, we can do it. And now it's like, I can do anything. It's okay. I got this. See.
That is awesome. And you probably did it way faster than I did when I did it myself, but that's always good too. Yoana, what about for yourself as you think about the history, culture, and identity? What are the things that stick out for you from that particular part of the program?
Something funny here. I don't know if you guys remember, but in El Teposteco, I was like, I'm going to run it. I'm just going to go up there and I'm going to run the whole thing. No, I did not run that. I was like, I am walking slower than a turtle here. But yeah, that was definitely one of the more like breathtaking ones. And I was like getting to be up there. And like after finishing this long journey to be at the top and be like, I did it. And like having something so beautiful at the end of it was very poetic, honestly. But another thing that really like struck me was going to see los dances folclóricos.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, porque
Palacio de Bellas Artes.
Yeah. I had never seen one in real life. I had always seen it on TV. I had seen it on YouTube, all the novelas and all that. So to actually get to see it in real life and be like, oh my God, like this is my culture and like this is where I come from. And I can't believe that I had been trying so hard to adapt into such an American culture where I was constantly trying to tell myself that I did belong here, that this is who I was, and then to get to see the whole other side and be like, why did I ever feel ashamed of coming from this? It's so beautiful. And I also remember we were looking at, we were at the museum and we were looking at all the dresses from back.
Was it when we were at Frida Kahlo's house?
No, it was
in the MISOL Popular.
Sí.
Yeah.
And yo estaba ahí contigo.
Dresses from each of
Yes. And like, yes.
Yes. And I remember that's something you and I connected on because we were like, it's just so beautiful. Like, I don't know. It's just like the whole experience to me was just like, it made me feel like my culture is so beautiful and there's so much more to it than what people think it is. So yeah, I really liked all of it, and I feel like I would have done like 3 more weeks in every single space. But yeah, it was beautiful.
Well, and learning that Mexico is one of the cities with the most museums too.
Yeah.
I feel like for me, and they were all free too. And thinking about like how much we didn't even touch in,
Right.
Because we only did certain museums that we were going to.
Yeah.
So, Dulce, what about for yourself? What are some of the things that kind of stick out as you think about culture, language, identity?
Yeah. So I think you said that, and the first thing that came to mind is El Teposteco. Tepoztlan was just a beautiful little town, right? Like it was gorgeous. And I felt like I wanted to live there when I was walking through. Like, this is the kind of, town I wanted to live in, a small town, but not a small town here, right? I would want like un pueblito is what I would always say. So that was like just breathtaking beautiful. And then El Teposteco, I went with the mentality that like, I'm going to conquer this thing. I'm going to conquer it. I'm going to walk it so fast, and it's going to be the greatest thing ever. But I kept in mind that you said it was rough, right? And I was like, well, I also don't walk that fast, and I get winded easily, and my knees, las rodillas, like me and Yoana walked it. Like we walked, we started it separately, and then we found each other like halfway through because we both were like, can't keep up with the people we came here with. So we ended up just sticking with each other, like, well, let's do this. Like, we can do this. So that really stuck out for me because I remember feeling ready to give up at one point. I felt like I was going to faint. I could tell something was actually off, and they were selling Gator. Like those people knew, like everybody working there, they knew. They're like, this is what you need to be okay throughout this journey, right? And I learned at the end when we stayed up at the pyramid, right? We were listening to the lecture of like what kind of everything means. And then it made sense of why that was such a grueling experience, because that's what they intended, right? That journey was like a moment of reflection the entire way through. And even the way that it was shaped and the way you went up and the way you went down, like everything was very intentional. So I remember at one point I like felt like I couldn't keep going, and I ate una paleta de limón, right? and that was like right after that I was like, oh yeah, let's finish this. Like, we got this. And every time we kept going, somebody would stop and be like, you're halfway there. You got like half more left. And they lied every time. Because even till the end, they were still saying like, oh, you're like about halfway. And we found like the halfway mark way later, way later. And we're like, they lied. So that was really grueling. And I had to go to the bathroom because I was sweating. So I was drinking a lot of water. I was eating paletas. Like, I needed to use the bathroom, and there was no bathroom up there. So I remembered like it was painful. I was sweaty. I was tired. My knees hurt. I was hungry. I had a headache, but like something was like, you just need to like, don't turn back now for what? Like, just keep going. And and we did it. And when we got to the top, it all made sense as to why like that journey was what it was, right? We went to a temple. And so the whole journey there and back is a moment of reflection. And I did have a lot of time to think of like, what am I capable of? What can I do? What have I been doing up until this moment? Why did I wait so much time to be, to go back to Mexico? I've had DACA since I was 16, and only at 27 was I traveling back to Mexico. So I was really hard on myself the whole trip because it was such a beautiful thing and something I'd wanted for so long. And when I got there, I'm like, me esperé mucho. Like I waited so long. I waited too long. So that was like, I thank you, Lalo, for recommending to do that, because I almost didn't in the beginning, but I was like, no, Lalo said we can do it. Like if Lalo says you can do it, you can do it. So it was really, really unique and beautiful experience, and I'm glad that I did it. And I told everybody, like when I came back, I told everybody I climbed a mountain. Look, like, I climbed a mountain all by myself.
Same, yeah.
Because it was a lot, right? I'm like, no lo puedo creer, I did it. But then honestly, just everything else, even learning the language, like having to speak Spanish, just totalmente, like that was really good. It was hard, but it was part of it, and like kind of like something I felt like I needed to do. And I never, I speak Spanish at home with my parents, but sometimes I still like stop speaking Spanish with them and I'll speak English. And that made me realize why I need to hold on to my language, like why it matters, why it's something to be proud of, the food, the music, the dances, like everything that makes us who we are. I was able to appreciate it and understand where it came from and why I need to maintain that. So I went there, thinking that patriotism was this weird thing. And like, I don't get why people care so much about their countries. And I came back like, oh, Viva Mexico. Like, I never want to leave. Like, you know, I was like so proud to be Mexican. And all of a sudden, like, I was standing around my family like, that's good, but it's not as good as it was in Mexico. And like, that's cool and everything. But like, look at what my culture is all about. And like, look at our music, and just overwhelmingly proud. And like, I remember telling my sister about the Independence playing, El Himno Nacional a las 12, like it plays. And, you know, here, like, I would have thought that was kind of kooky. Like, oh, I don't know why people are so patriotic, but I was there, and all of a sudden I was like, oh, I don't know it, but I'm going to sing it. And like, you know, it was so beautiful to learn where we come from and why we are the way we are, why our foods are the way they are, you know, just why we are, and be able to see it in a place where it's loved, it's protected, people are proud of it. Everybody like out there makes you feel good for who you are. And so that was probably like the most build up thing I could, like, you know, build up my confidence so much to be able to experience that and be around people that are like, sí, ser Mexicano is a beautiful thing and you should be proud of it. And it's unique, and our country, you know, has so much to offer. So it's nothing to be ashamed about, regardless of what we're looked at here and what we experience here, right? Because we're still a marginalized community here. And so I experienced a lot of that when I was growing up, and it made me not like who I was. And I, you know, told my mom, like, don't speak Spanish. Like, just stop. Like, you're embarrassing me. Like, I don't want to, you know, we're not Mexican, because people would call me names. And now I'm just like, soy Mexicana. Like, I love it. You guys aren't, you know, you wouldn't get it if you're not. So yeah, that was getting to see all of that. And like, los profesores were so good at what they did. They made sure that we understood what we were learning, right? We weren't just like, no más estaban enseñando cosas. They were like, this is why this is, you know, important to know, or like, this is why you guys should, you know, learn this. So it was really great to have them. I felt like I was capable of so much because of that program, of being able to learn. I stopped going to school here after high school. So my whole life I've kind of been discouraged to go back and learn. But that was like, that solidified that like, I want to go back and learn now, and for myself, and to just see kind of what all is out there. Cause yeah, there's so much history, and we touch like a tiny bit of it. Right. Like even El Museo de Antropología, like we stepped in it for like 10, 15, 20 minutes and left. And like, we saw none of it. Right. Like it was so much to still learn. So yeah, all of it was like, wow, I can't believe I'm here learning all of this. And of course, now I came back and I think I know something, and my dad's like, no, you still don't know that much. Like, cálmate, you know, fuiste a Mexico por un mes, like, you're not, it's okay. You know, I lived there for 30 something years. I'm like, yeah, whatever. But yeah.
But you're also talking about this importance of identity and how it was threaded throughout the whole program, both when you're working with your family, but then as we were working with UNAM and having the professors kind of talk about history, identity, and culture, and how that all is part of who we are today, and the importance that they were bringing that forward. So as we think about the two different parts that were part of it too, so we had the family part of it, then with the second part we had the group with UNAM, and then after that we had this whole process of returning back to the United States. And that whole process is unique within itself, too. I'm wondering if you all can talk about that process. What did it feel like to come back to the United States? I remember going in that's usually one of the biggest places that people have anxiety of doing Advance Parole, is trying to think about that retraining. So I'm wondering if we could talk a little bit about that. And Yoana, I don't know if you feel comfortable going first with this one.
Yeah. So when I first got to Mexico, I was, like I said, I was still feeling a little weird because it like also felt like I didn't belong there either, but then it also felt like I didn't belong here. But after kind of learning more and getting like used to it, I was like, I am most definitely from here. And then coming back here, I was just like, still feels like this is not where I'm supposed to be. So I have definitely been missing Mexico a lot, and been missing my grandparents a lot too. And like, at least for me, I've been having a lot of like urgency to go back just because they are older, and I know my mom hasn't seen them in a long time. So there's kind of this like pressure of like, I need to make sure that my mom can see her parents before they pass. So I can understand where that anxiety comes. So it's been more like that for me, but also I do feel like since coming back, I do have a better understanding of who I am and like what my identity is, and kind of have a better grasp on that. And like I'm embracing that a little better. I'm not necessarily like trying to fit in too much anymore. Like if people were to ask me about my heritage or like where I'm from, I'm like gladly gonna tell you all about it, and I will tell you about my trip to Mexico for hours, and I'll tell you all the different foods that I tried. And so yeah, I miss the food and I miss the family. I miss literally like the way that Mexico smells. Not Mexico City but el pueblito. I miss like the people que a veces, o sea, they would give you everything even though they knew that you weren't from there and that you came from the US. They would not take my money. They would just like freely give me everything. And it's just like so refreshing to see, because I feel like here we often see of like, I'll give you this as long as you give me that. So to be able to be surrounded by that kind of people, it was very refreshing. And like, I feel like I always carry that with me in everything that I do, of like making sure that I am portraying that into every patient I work with, and making sure that I am giving it my all, and like making sure that I am taking care of them as if I were taking care of my own grandparents. So yeah, I mean, those kinds of things I really appreciate from that whole experience.
There was feeling of welcoming, the being present, the acompañamiento going with you too, that I definitely could relate to that as well. Thank you for sharing that. Dulce, what about for yourself? Coming back, like, what was that process like to return to the U.S.? And you kind of talked a little bit previously about it, but like, how did that feel?
It was, I think I was so sad having to leave that I almost didn't really realize what I was in the middle of. Like, I'm just worried about saying bye to my aunts. Two of my aunts and my uncle dropped me off at the airport. And I went with my partner, and so he actually stayed with my family for that week, 8 days, 10 days, something like that, that we were with Alaunam. So he grew really close to my family, and so the goodbyes were really hard. You know, we're crying, like we're not wanting to leave. Like I really wanted to stay. And I knew I couldn't, like I knew I had to go, but I really wanted to stay. And so my permiso, my advance parole was 1 day before everybody else's. Oh, yeah. So I had to leave the day early, right? And like I had already spent Friday night saying bye to you guys, and that was so rough. And like, it made it more real that I was leaving. And then I went back home to my family to, you know, grab my suitcases. And so I'm saying goodbye to my cousins, and like I'm packing all my stuff up. I went to Mexico with 2 suitcases, like 2 big ones and 2 little ones, 2 carry-ons. And we left with 4 big ones. Like we used up 2 more things of luggage to like fit all the pictures, all of the candy, all of like the stuff, you know, liquor. My family sent everything you could think of. And then I, of course, bought everything. So I was so wrapped up in that it didn't hit me till we got to Chicago, truthfully, what I was about to go through. And so it was honestly probably the scariest thing I've ever done in my life. I was able to walk with my partner all the way till we got to customs and immigration. And that's where I had to go through the visitors, and he was able to go through citizen, right, like the area. So we separated, and he went through, like I watched him go through that line like that. Like he's on the other side looking for me. He's like, you could tell he's getting really anxious. Like, where is she? He's got our luggage, and I'm still in line waiting to get to this first part, right? And I have no idea what I'm doing. Like I've never flown before. This is obviously my first time even like an international flight. So it's even more weird because I don't know how that works. And so I'm sitting there, and like I'm remembering like you guys telling me, you and Jasenia and Erica were all like, you got this. Like it's not that bad. You got this. And so I'm sitting there like with my passport and like all my documents, making sure I have everything that they're going to ask for. And I get to the little window, and the guy's like, so what do you have with you? And I was like, things. And he's like, what things? Like, I need you to like, what are you declaring? And I'm like, what does that mean? And then he's like, do you have money? And I was like, yeah, I brought back a lot of pesos for my family. I was collecting the 50 ones with the ajolote on them. And so I had a bunch of them, and they're like, and I told them, I said, yeah, I have a lot of money. And they're like, how much? And I was like, I don't know, like 500 pesos. And I said it like that. And he's like, what does that mean, ma'am? And I was like, I don't know. It's like this many dollars. And he's like, oh, but you don't have like thousands of dollars with you. I was like, no. He's like, oh, okay, then that's fine. You're good. And he's like just asking about all the things that I have. And I'm like telling him, and he was really cool, super nice. He made it a really easy process. And so he takes my documents. He doesn't give me any of it back. And he calls an officer. which you guys had explained to me that was something that was going to happen, right? So I was kind of prepared. And I watched her come over. She walked over. We're in Chicago, so a lot of the officers there looked like they were also Hispanic or Latino, so it made me feel a little better, which was a lie. Like, it shouldn't have made me feel better because it didn't matter at all. So she takes my stuff and she walks me over to like the detention area. CBP, right? El Cuartito. Oh my gosh. I am praying the next time I go to Mexico and come back, I don't have to be in El Cuartito, because that was the worst. I was there for like 3 or 4 hours. I was there for a while. Yeah, my flight landed at like noon and I wasn't leaving the airport till like 4. Like, it took forever for me to get out of there. And so I'm sitting there, like, I walk in, right? And like, she gives my documents to another officer and they're leaving and I just sit down and they're watching sports. I was the only Hispanic person there. Like, everybody else, different countries, you could tell. People were speaking different languages. So I was a little thrown off, but it made sense. And, I'm watching them come and grab people and taking them to the back. And then there's a girl who's like crying and she's anxious and like she looks like she's having a hard time. And she goes up to the officer and she's like, hey, I'm just wondering, how long is this going to take? And he was like, it's going to take as long as it's going to take. And if you don't like it, you can go back to where you came from. And I was just like,
oh my God,
what is this? Like, I was like, wow. Okay. And then I read, that it was detention, like, and your rights or whatever. So honestly, that's when it hit. Like, when I'm there and I'm watching these interactions, I was like, wow, like, this is where I find out if I'm good or not. And I knew I was going to be okay. Like, I knew there was very little chance of them denying me parole. And while it was an option, I felt that like I had gone through so much to renew my DECA and get my DECA that made me feel, confident that I was going to be able to make it back to the States, like completely clear with my documents in hand. But part of me felt like I wasn't, because I was in El Cuartito, surrounded by all those people and the officers, and like what it was, I was scared. And like, I, was just sitting there and I was trying to text people, but I had no reception. And then I also didn't want to take my phone out because I didn't want to get yelled at, because it felt like a place where you would get yelled at for doing things. And then a guy from Aeromexico came in and he's like, anybody con Aeromexico, I have information about your luggage. And so he was trying to help me get my luggage together. And that kind of made me feel better. I was like, okay, maybe like the process is getting there. And then finally, like she came back and she called out my name. And she gave me my documents and she showed them to the other officer and was like, do you need her to like fingerprint her or anything else? And he's like, nope, if you think she's good, then she's good with me. And she's like, yeah, I guess she's good. It's Saturday or something along those lines. And I was like, I don't care why you're letting me go, but thank you for letting me go. And so she gave me my documents and I checked and I had like the stamp on my parole, my advance parole, no stamp on my passport. And I like was kind of sad because like I want my passport to be stamped, but I was like, I don't care. I'm leaving with my things. And she's like, do you need help getting to where you gotta go? I was like, nope, I got it. My luggage is with my partner. They're already out there. I'm good. Thank you. Like, I just want to go. And something came over me and I was just like, wow, like all these doubts that you put in your head when you're going through this, right? Like they seem so real because some of the things are real. Some of your worries are real, but honestly, I think it's just a way that we hold ourselves back from being able to do these things that are there to help us. And a lot of people aren't able to take advantage of advance parole, and some people haven't had good luck with it. But the fact that it's there and like not a lot of people are using it or taking advantage of it, to me is like, what can we do to support them to get there? Because I was so scared, and for good reason, but it honestly worked out perfectly. And I see my boyfriend and my parents and they all start crying. They're like, we didn't think they were going to let you out. And I was like, no, look, I got it. And like, we all knew what that meant. Like I made it back all the way through. And so it opened these opportunities for people in my life, my sister, my brother-in-law, my cousins, right? They're all like, we were just waiting for you to come back to see if it worked. And it worked out for you, you know? So it gave them this hope because we didn't know anybody else that had traveled with advance parole. So yeah, that was really, really scary, but it's like one of those things like el teposteco, like you kind of have to do it and something just keeps like, there's no going back. I'm not going to just say, hey, actually, I don't know if you're going to let me. So like send me back to Mexico. Like, no, you can't go back. Like I was there, I was in El Cuartito and it was just, I just had to write it out and hope for the best. And thankfully, yeah, like I got all my papers and I remember taking the picture, leaving the airport and I was like, yes, like I did it. It's done. I have a new path has opened up for me now, and the possibilities are endless. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing. And one of the things that we normally do with the group is try to have you all meet with the lawyers before we leave as we're filling out the AP paperwork. And even though everybody had the same dates for the traveling, for some reason yours ended up getting one day shorter. So you ended up experiencing something completely different than the rest of the group. Because everybody else, then the following day is when we went through the cuartito. And I think it was about 2 to 3 hours as well for us, right?
Yeah,
Honestly, I thought it was really fast.
Oh,
or maybe I just like blacked out. I don't know. I was so anxious. Also, I just realized that you meant like the process of physically coming back and not like emotionally adjusting.
I think both of those are part of it too. I think it's like you mentioned, is both end is the physical, but it's also like the emotional part of being back here and making sense of what just happened in Mexico as well as what is happening here. When we came together as a group, a large group, and I think that some people went through very quickly, but then there was the last person that went through, I think it was like 2 or 3 hours later as well.
Yeah.
So I remember waiting, of course, as a coordinator, I wanted to wait until everybody got there, but there were some people who ended up leaving maybe at the hour, maybe at the 2-hour mark. And so we landed more closer to the night as well. And so I think that there was a lot of flights that came in at the same time.
I think a lot of that anxiety, at least for me, came from like, I like so badly knew that they were trying to find something illegal in me. And I was like, oh my God, what if I am doing something wrong? Even though like I knew for sure this was okay and I had all the right paperwork and it was all going to work out. But in my head, I was like, am I doing something wrong?
Yeah.
Like, am I going to get stopped?
It feels wrong because you're in detention. So I was just like, what happens from here? But yeah, like the officer takes you and you're with immigration and customs. And so other people from other countries are flying in, right? So they're getting their visa stamped. They're getting their stickers and their paperwork from the guy and all their stuff handed back to them and they're going. And so I was expecting something similar. And for a second there, I was like, they don't know what they're talking about. The cuartito doesn't exist. Like, I'm about to just get my papers and go. And then he's like, you know, pointing over the officer and gives her my documents. And I was like, oh no, like I still have that to go through. We'll get through it. Yeah.
I think it also helped that Chicago, at least, they have a lot of experience with DACA people coming through. Yeah. So they understand that process. I have heard of other stories from different airports where they don't know that process as well. And it makes it a lot harder for people to come back. But I definitely don't think that it should be something that holds people back from doing it, just because it really does pay off.
For sure. I think I heard some of the officers be like, oh, what happened? Because they saw a lot of people when we got there. And one of them was like, oh, you know, DACA. I was like, oh, okay. So
we did have a large group, though.
It was a large group, and then the rest of the people that were there from different places too. But I thought they were gonna call the name to go to the extra cuartito more. I was like, oh my God, I hope they don't take me there. And we were very anxious. Like, who was with? I don't remember. I was with Irma, I think. I'm not sure, but at the end, I was with Smiley, and she's like, oh my God, I'm very anxious. I don't know what to do. I'm like, me too, but just wait it out. And I think it was 3 of us that got called at the very end, and we were very anxious. But as soon as we heard our name, we were like, whoop, and out. And I remember everybody like just waiting for us with that luggage and everything, and then we went out and took our bag and ran out of there. Like, we were running out of there. And I was like, oh,
we wanted to take a picture, and I don't know if we ever got the picture.
I don't think so. No, we were very anxious. After that, we were all like done. We were like, okay, we're here. We're safe. Let's just all go. Yeah.
I also remember there were, at least, I don't know if you remember, but there were some kids there that were coming in with their parents. And I just remember like thinking back to when maybe that was my mom, you know, and like just thinking like what their story was and just very curious on that.
So was there anything else on Yoana about like the return process that kind of you remember feeling or going through? I mean, we talked a little bit about the cuartito and that whole process.
Yeah, the whole process. I mean, it was a simple process, but it was heart-wrenching, you know, because it was like just make sure that we were gonna come back home. Like for me, it was like something that I really, really wanted because my kids were here. Mm-hmm. I think it was different for them because you don't have kids, right? Mm-mm, okay, yeah. No. So it was like, okay, I mean, you wanted to be here, but at the same time, you wanted to stay there,
if you
right?
If it doesn't work out, it's okay. Like I already had planned, like I'm going to work here. I will live here, and this is how I'm going to earn money. Like, I had a fallback plan if they were like, nope, we're not letting you back in.
Yeah.
I was like, okay.
I was telling him that, I was also like, I was telling my kids, this is what we're gonna do if they don't let me in. You guys need to follow me. You guys need to be there with me. And they were like, yes, mom, it's okay. But my mom was like, no, it's okay. Everything is gonna be okay. Just, encomiéndate a Dios, como siempre. Sí, mami. But it was crazy.
Well, thank you all for sharing that experience, because I know a lot of times when people think about AP, this is the part where the anxiety starts getting created because they're not sure what the process is, what the documents are, and all that process. But as you mentioned, if you've been able to get the advance parole ahead of time, you already have the ability to come back into the United States through that lawful entry as well. So as we're getting close to the end of the podcast, one of my final questions is there anything else that you would like to share with the audience, either about AP, about your trip, or just some words of advice that you would have for other people who might be interested in doing something? Several of you kind of talked about this idea of if you have the opportunity to do AP for humanitarian, for work, or for education, to go ahead and do that. But what would be your final words as we kind of think about wrapping up this podcast?
I want, if anybody out there is thinking about doing it and you have any doubts, your doubts are valid, but do it. Like, don't hold back. Don't wait, because I waited thinking that, I'm just going to wait for the right opportunity to come along. And, I was scared. I didn't know if I was going to come back. And at that time, it felt like it was too risky to do it. And in the grand scheme of things, like, it really wasn't. I should have gone sooner. I lost both of my grandpas on my mom and my dad's side, months apart within each other. One of them died in April and the other one died in June. And then we went to Mexico in August. And so it was so much guilt behind waiting to go, because I wanted to see them more than anything, right? One of my grandparents was able to come and, visit us and see us, but my other grandpa never was able to come. And so I spent the rest of my life without being able to hug him or give him a kiss or talk to him or hear stories from him. So I regret that I waited so long to go. And I think that it's scary and it's hard, and, it takes a lot. It takes a lot emotionally, mentally, even physically. It costs money. It's a lot of having to figure out, where you're going to stay, what are you going to do, but it's so worth it. My life will forever be different because of this experience. And I'm so thankful that I, just went for it, and that I left my fears behind, and that I just didn't try to doubt myself or anybody that was a part of this trip, because I wanted to believe in it so hard. I needed to, I knew that time was in a way running out for me and my family to be able to have that experience be meaningful. And so I think that if you're thinking about it, do it. The worst case scenario is you get to see your family again. And I don't see how that, I can never give that up. I wish I could. I want to redo it, right? And I'm lucky enough that I'm in the position where I'm, my partner and I have been together for so long. We're actually getting ready to get married. And so I know, thank you. I'm so excited. We've always talked about it. We've been together for so long. And after the trip, we got really serious about it, and we've already started the process on the marriage license. So we'll be doing that soon here. And that's letting me know I'm going to be able to go back. Right. So I think, if you're thinking about it, do it. I want there to be more of us in the situation that we're in, where we are documented or undocumented and living in this country and doing so much greatness for this country, because I know I work in a school for special needs, and I know that there are a lot of people out there who are nurses, who are doctors, who are lawyers, and even the people that aren't, right? You're raising children here. You've lived your whole life here. We are part of this country now. And I think that if more of us can go home and make peace with that, then we can come here and bring in awareness and education for the kind of people that we are, right? Because I've heard stories of dreamers and what dreamers are, and they try to label us and they try to label our communities. And, even now when things get so political, and I think they forget that at the end of the day, we're human, right? Our families had a hope for new possibilities, for opportunities of education, healthcare, safer homes. And I came back with that in mind. If I can share my story to somebody and educate them and help them understand, why I can't just be a citizen, or, why it is that my parents are undocumented, or, why I have DACA. Like, if I can educate people on what these things are, because I was able to go back to Mexico, heal something in me, and learn a little bit more to be able to come back and teach people this, then I can end some of the stigma surrounding immigration, and tenfold, hopefully that'll, help my children, my children's children, my sister's children, all the people who are part of our community be able to have more opportunities, right? Better paying jobs, more education, access to better healthcare, access to better programs to help them establish themselves here. We're here now, we can't take that back. I didn't choose to come here. My parents brought me here. And so, yeah, I think that it's important that we get more education and awareness on this out there on DACA and immigration and, documented folks. And I think that the best way you can do that is by yourself going back home and getting to see why all of this is the way that it is. So, yeah, do it. Please do it. If you can go with Lalo, Erika, and Yesenia, even better. Like, apply. You won't regret it. You can save money for it. Like, when you want it, you make it work. And so, and even if you can't, like, I know people opened up GoFundMe's account. I'll donate to your cause. Like, I will support anybody any way that I can to be able to do this, because it still is so life-changing. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Dulce. And as you mentioned, that idea of continuing to learn about our history, our identity, and immigration essence ever-changing is very, very critical. Yoana or Yoana, what would be your final words or words of advice for the audience?
I would 100% agree with that. Like, if you are thinking about doing it, like, really just do it. Like, of course, like, talk to your lawyer, take it slow, don't go a little bonkers, but do it. Just because you really don't know what can happen. But I think another piece of advice for me would be, don't get sick in Mexico, because here's the story. I ended up getting sick, some sort of like throat thing. And when I went to go visit like the doctor at the pharmacy, which is so cool that they have that, they were like, okay, I'm going to give you these antibiotics. Do you want them in oral form, or do you want them in like a injection? I was like, oh, it'll just be just one injection. Like, you could just do it here. I don't want to take pills. So I was like, you know what? En las inyecciones, por favor. It was 7 injections that I had to draw up myself and give myself, not on the arm, but on my butt. And then I had to have Erika was almost going to do it. And oh my God, it was el drama. And it was mostly my fault too. But yeah, don't get sick in Mexico. And if you do, maybe ask for the pills instead of the injections. But yes, 100% go.
So thinking about the medical health care, how it's different. Over
yes, it is so cool.
Yeah.
What about you, Joanna? What would be your final thoughts?
Final thoughts, the same thing. Just if you're thinking of doing it, do it. The worst thing that can happen is you stay over there with your other family, and then we can always be redone. If we made it here, we can make it over there. So I think that's 100% my take on that. Just take the risk, and there's only one chance that you get. And if you take it, then it could go either or, but there's always a solution for everything. So yeah.
And we have a big community here. I think that really helps. At least in Madison, we have a really strong community with DACA people and just undocumented people, and there's always going to be someone that's going to be willing to help.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I learned here too. I didn't know like any of this before this happened, like Advance Parole or anything like that I needed for everything else. So I'm really happy that I got involved in that now that I know more. And that's the other thing, just get informed, like look it up. And the internet is our friend now, so you can find everything and anything there. And then with all your good information, like you could do even more. And unfortunately, there's a lot of discrimination here, which I lived. I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago. Then one lady like stopped me and told me to go back to Mexico, right? And I wish I can see her now and see, I went back to Mexico and I came back here. So yeah, and I'm back just for you. Yeah.
But I think, as you mentioned, is like do it and then try to take as many steps as possible. Checking in with the lawyers, checking in with the community. If there's programs like MISOL or other similar ones, to try to do with the program so that way you could be respaldado, or you like feel like you're going with everything correctly as you're doing it too.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's pricey too. I mean, it's pricey, and if you have family, then everything's like very expensive. But at the same time, if there's like a lot of programs that you can take advantage of, you can see a lawyer. I think Centro Hispano also has a lot of like lawyers that they can help you out with a lot of stuff. Just involve yourself in the community, and you will get your answers too. Yeah.
And we use the Community Immigration Law Center, SILC, as the lawyers that helped us with this program as well. So shout out to them as well for all
Yeah,
this.
for sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all for coming to the show today. I'm really grateful for your time and also the memories of the trip as well. And also the learning that occurs as you think about reflecting on those experiences and thinking about who we were before we left, who we became once we were there, and who we are now after we reflect on that experience as well. And so it was really powerful to hear your stories and kind of hear about that change or those moments that were critical. Again, I hated that I couldn't go to Posteco, but as Yoana said, I ended up getting sick there too. So. Yeah, but thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank
Thank you for
Lalo.
inviting
Thank
us.
you, thank you.
Thank you.
And for the audience, if you stay tuned for the next episode, we're going to have 2 additional participants talk about their experience in a similar way. So that will be in our following up episode. So thank you so much, and hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Educators and Immigration Podcast. You can find out more information about us at www.educatorsand'immigration.com. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share our podcast with your family, friends, and colleagues. You could also leave us a review and rate us on Apple Podcasts as well as Spotify. Thank you again, and I hope you have a great day.